Welcome to History in Flames. Empires rise and fall, the past comes alive in fire and ash. Subscribe and relive stories that shaped the world. They became the most decorated military unit in American history. They earned more medals per soldier than any other unit in the entire war. And while they fought and bled and died for the United States of America, their mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters were locked in prison camps on American soil. Their only crime was being Japanese American. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. For 127,000 Japanese Americans living in the United States, most of them born in America, most of them citizens, the world changed overnight. Suddenly they were viewed with suspicion. Suddenly their loyalty was questioned. Suddenly their neighbors looked at them differently. On February 19, 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. It authorized the forced removal of all people of Japanese ancestry from the west coast of the United States. 127,000 men, women, and children, 2/3 of them. American citizens were given days to abandon their homes, businesses, and farms. They were sent to internment camps surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards. 10 internment camps were built across the American interior in deserts and swamps and remote wilderness. Manzanar, Tule Lake, Hart, Mountain Rower, Jerome. Families were given a single room in a tar paper barrack, communal toilets, no privacy, barbed wire, guard towers with searchlights. This was not wartime inconvenience. This was imprisonment of innocent people by their own government. The Japanese Americans born in America were called Nisei second generation. Most had never been to Japan. They spoke English. They went to American schools. They played baseball. They listened to American music. And when their country called them traitors and locked their families behind wires, some of them chose to volunteer anyway. In 1943, the War Department distributed a loyalty questionnaire to all Japanese Americans in the camps. Question 27, are you willing to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces? Question 28, will you swear allegiance to the United States? For many, it felt like a cruel joke. Prove your loyalty to the country that just imprisoned you, but thousands answered yes, and they meant it. In January 1943, President Roosevelt announced that Japanese Americans would be allowed to volunteer for military service. From the internment camps, thousands of young men stepped forward. Their reasons varied: prove our loyalty, protect our families, show America we are Americans. Some were motivated by the Japanese concept of shikata ganai, it cannot be helped. Make the best of what we have. The 442nd Regimental Combat Team was activated on February 1, 1943. Its motto, "Go for broke," was a Hawaiian gambling term, meaning to wager everything on a single throw. It perfectly captured what these men were doing. They were wagering everything, their lives, for a country that had just taken everything from their families. They shipped out to Europe in 1944. The 442nd arrived in Italy in June 1944, the same month as D-Day. They were attached to the 36th Texas Division. From the beginning, their commanders were skeptical. Some were openly hostile. Japanese American soldiers fighting for America in Europe seemed to many like a contradiction too strange to comprehend. The 442nd was about to make their opinion irrelevant. In their first major engagement at Belvedere in June 1944, the 442nd took their objective when other units had failed. In the weeks that followed, they fought through some of the most brutal terrain in Italy, the Gothic Line Hill, 140 Livorno. They took casualties at an extraordinary rate. They kept advancing. Their commanders stopped being skeptical. While the men of the 442nd fought in Italy, their families wrote letters from the internment camps. The letters described camp life, the dust, the heat, the boredom. They asked about friends. They sent photographs. They never complained. The soldiers carried these letters into battle. Some of them were found on the bodies of men who did not come home. In October 1944, the 442nd was transferred to France and sent into the Vosges Mountains, one of the most brutal combat environments of the entire European war. Dense forest, steep terrain, autumn rain turning to snow, German defenders deeply entrenched. In a mission that would define the 442nd forever. On October 24, 1944, the 1st Battalion of the 141st Texas Regiment, 211 men, was surrounded by German forces in the Vosges Mountains. They had been cut off for 4 days. They were running out of food, ammunition, and medical supplies. Other units had tried to break through and failed. The army turned to the 442nd. The 442nd was ordered to rescue the Lost Battalion. They had already been fighting continuously for weeks. They were exhausted. They were taking casualties faster than replacements could arrive. And now they were ordered to push through heavily defended German lines in dense forest to rescue a battalion of Texans men from a state where Japanese Americans faced discrimination even in peacetime. They went anyway. For 4 days, the 442nd fought through the Vosges. Hill by hill, tree by tree, German machine guns dug into every ridge, mortar firing from positions invisible in the forest. In 4 days, the 442nd suffered 800 casualties to rescue 211 men. They paid nearly 4 lives for every man they saved, and they did not stop. On October 30th, 1944, the 442nd broke through the German lines and reached the Lost Battalion. The 211 Texans who walked out of the forest were met by Japanese American soldiers who had just paid 800 casualties to save them. One Texan soldier later said, "I looked at them and I thought these men just died for me. Men who I would not have sat next to on a bus back home." The rescue of the Lost Battalion cost the 442nd 800 casualties in 4 days. For a regiment of approximately 3,000 men, that was catastrophic. Companies that had started with 200 men were down to 40. Entire platoons were gone. The 442nd had to be pulled from the line and rebuilt with replacements. But the Lost Battalion was safe. By the end of W2, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team had become the most decorated unit in American military history for its size and length of service. 21 Medals of Honor, 52 Distinguished Service Crosses, 560 Silver Stars, 4,000 Bronze Stars, 9,486 Purple Hearts. A unit of approximately 14,000 men over its history, earning more decorations than any comparable unit in the history of the United States Army. One of the most extraordinary members of the 442nd was Daniel Inouye, a 20-year-old from Honolulu. In April 1945 in Italy, he charged 3 German machine gun positions single-handedly after being shot through the stomach. When a German soldier fired a grenade launcher at him and blew off his right arm, he pried the grenade from his severed arm with his left hand and threw it at the enemy. He was awarded the Medal of Honor. He later became a U.S. Senator from Hawaii, serving for 50 years. When the men of the 442nd came home from Europe, they came home as heroes. And they came home to a country that still did not fully accept them. Some were refused service in restaurants. Some found their families' farms and businesses had been taken while they were imprisoned. In California, a sign appeared outside a barbershop, "No Japs." This meant veterans too. In 1946, President Truman reviewed the 442nd and told them, "You fought not only the enemy, but you fought prejudice, and you won." But prejudice had not been fully defeated. An Army review later found that racial bias had systematically denied Japanese American soldiers the Medal of Honor they had earned during the war. Decorations had been downgraded. Recommendations rejected. In June 2000, 55 years after the war, President Bill Clinton upgraded 20 Distinguished Service Crosses awarded to Japanese American soldiers to Medals of Honor. Of the 20 recipients, only 7 were still alive to receive them. The others were represented by their children and grandchildren. The ceremony was long overdue and deeply moving. The 442nd was closely associated with the 100th Infantry Battalion, an earlier unit of Hawaiian Japanese Americans who had been fighting in Italy since 1943. The 100th suffered such devastating casualties that they became known as the Purple Heart Battalion. When they merged with the 442nd, they brought with them a combat record of extraordinary courage. Together, they were unstoppable. Not all Japanese Americans answered yes on the loyalty questionnaire. About 8,000 answered no to both questions. They became known as the No-No Boys. Some refused on principle. Why should I swear loyalty to a government that just imprisoned my family? Some were sent to federal prison. Their story is equally important. The right to resist injustice is as American as the right to serve. Fred Korematsu was a Japanese American who refused to report to an internment camp. He was arrested, prosecuted, and convicted. His case went to the Supreme Court, which ruled in 1944 that the internment was constitutional. In 1983, a federal court overturned his conviction. In 1998, President Clinton awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The Supreme Court decision has never been formally overturned. In 1988, 46 years after Executive Order 9066, President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act. The United States government, formally, apologized for the internment and paid $20,000 in reparations to each surviving internee. Reagan said the internment was the result of wartime hysteria, racial prejudice, and a failure of political leadership. It took 46 years to say it. The story of the 442nd asks us an uncomfortable question. If the American government could imprison 120,000 of its own citizens based on their ancestry in the middle of a war against fascism, what does that say about the nature of democracy? And if those same citizens could then choose to fight for that democracy, what does that say about the nature of loyalty? The answers are not comfortable, but they are necessary. Men of the 442nd had names like Takahashi and Yamamoto and Nakamura and Watanabe. They had parents who were born in Japan and children who would grow up as fully American, spoke English, they played baseball, they loved this country, even when this country did not love them back. Their names are carved on monuments across America. They deserve to be known. Go for broke. They wagered everything. Their lives for a country that had taken everything from their families. They won the wager. They came home with more decorations than any comparable unit in American history. And they came home to a country that still had a great deal of work to do. They did that work anyway, quietly with dignity, the way they had done everything. The 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the most decorated unit in American military history. Men who fought for a country that imprisoned their families, they deserve to be remembered. If this story moved, you share it. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more. Share your thoughts below.